afternoon, everybody. Thank you for participating in our webinar today. We had a little bit of a glitch with some microphones, so our apology. And hopefully my team can assist me in moderating the webinar. My name is Agnes Jimenez. I am the principal lawyer at No Borders Migration. So today we are going to speak about how you can sponsor your parents from overseas or if they are here in Australia. Please, the next slide. Just a little bit about ourselves. No Borders Migration has been established 27 years ago, just by myself, and we have grown in the last 27 years to a very sizable migration firm, one of the best in Australia, with offices in Brisbane, Sydney, and Adelaide. And certainly we are doing and have done many parent visa applications in the past. Why we are here actually and why we are doing what we're doing, I think is the most important aspects of our work. It's really providing an awesome life for our clients in Australia and also changing people's life. Sometimes for the better, sometimes, maybe not the better, depends on what people would like to see. But I still believe Australia is one of the best countries in the world. And if we can facilitate people living in this country, this is our why. Okay, next screen, please. As I mentioned, we have grown the firm to not just migration, but also other divisions in the law practice. We have commercial, employment, property law, and certainly the migration. Next slide, please. Okay, very briefly about the agenda today, okay? So very firstly, we're going to discuss 5 key aspects of parent visa applications, or 5 different classes of parent visa applications. What are the key requirements generally for a parent visa application, permanent visa versus temporary parent visa, comparison and what to expect in terms of waiting times. Okay, now this is going to be a very interesting topic because, as you know, the Department of Immigration is really very slow with granting parent visas, while this government actually has made an announcement some time ago that they would like to prioritize parent visa applications. We really haven't seen the processing times to be reduced substantially. Hopefully, it will happen soon. The next part is how to meet the sponsorship. Sorry, can you go back for 1 second? How to meet the sponsorship requirement, which is also very important, and we can discuss a couple of interesting aspects here. And understanding the role of a sponsor and the impact on your visa application. Next slide, please. What is a parent visa and what benefit does it offer and how can parents apply for it? Okay, now sometimes I maybe differ from the slides because you can appreciate I have 27 years experience and sometimes I bring in some examples from my experiences. But really the most important thing here is to decide by yourself and by the parents. Do you want to have your parents here? And do the parents would like to live here in Australia with you and reunited? I talk to many times to clients and then they say, oh, I would love my parents to be here, but my parents don't want to be here. The answer for that is really that if the parents want to get their permanent residency, and I have a number of clients like that, they can come and go and they can go back to their home country, but they can come back here anytime because they are Australian permanent residents. Okay, so that's something which I would like to highlight. If both parties, the sponsor and the applicant, has decided that they would like to go ahead do that because anytime once the permanent residency is granted or even a temporary visa, they can just come here, get on a flight because they have the visa. Okay, what is the application process? First of all, you know, the eligibility has to be assessed, okay, in regards to age requirement, in regards to balance of family test, in regards to the sponsorship requirement, and certainly financial requirements because the sponsor needs to meet certain financial eligibility, and especially for certain visa classes. Then choose the right visa. So we can choose onshore and offshore parent visa. We can choose contributory and non-contributory parent visa. We can choose permanent resident visa. We can choose temporary resident visa. So this has to be decided at the beginning. Once the application is lodged, there is a central parent visa processing facility in Western Australia. Don't ask me why it's in Western Australia, but it is. And usually the parent visa application is a paper application. It is not all parent visa application is a paper application, but the majority of the applications are paper applications. Once the application is received, usually takes about 4 weeks. So it's also important to mention here that once your parents are here and they are applying here for the visa, think about to apply about 2 months prior to the visa expiry date because they would receive a bridging visa for an onshore application. And if it's more than 4 weeks, they can become unlawful and they're not going to grant them a bridging visa A, which in turn allows them to travel during the processing time. But this is all the nitty-gritty stuff what we can discuss with our clients once we're representing the clients. Wait for the process. Immigration will notify in acknowledgement letter, what is the next step. They would require to undertake health check, and once everything has been assessed, then the department will issue a Q date. Once they meeting the requirements, probably in about 10 years' time or 12 years' time, then the department will advise of the visa grant, or they advise pay the final fee, the contribution fee, and the visa will be granted. So that's in a nutshell about the processing of the parent visa. Next slide, please. This is just a quick information for you, how many parent visas. So they have about 6,800 parent visas in the pipeline, okay? And the maximum about 112 visa gets granted in a year because it's a capped system, okay? They have certain number of parent visas for each category, and if they have 2,000 parent visa allowed in a year, because the majority of visas are skilled visas or employer-sponsored visas or partners visas, then these are the number of visas which are granted in a year. 1,700 parent visa, which is just a normal subclass 103 parent visa. Maximum 13 visas may be granted in a year. Therefore, the processing time can be around 30-35 years. Okay, so maximum 500 other family visas may be granted. Other family visas are different visa classes. May I have the next slide, please? Key requirements for all parent visas. Now, why we have different subclasses? There are each visa class or each subclass requires very much the same requirements, or requires very much the same attributes. First of all, what is parent, or who is a parent, okay, to a child, and how the parent can meet the parent visa requirements. It must be a balance of family test, which has to be met, okay? 50% or more of the children must live in Australia as a permanent resident. So if that requirement is not met, then the person cannot apply for a parent visa, okay? That's in a nutshell. Now, for a temporary parent visa, the rule is different. There is no requirement for balance of family test. And this is a temporary visa, which is, we are going to talk about it, the 870 subclass. No requirement for balance of family test. They must meet health and character requirements. Like if someone is on blood pressure medication or someone has a diabetes, but it's under control, these are not, they won't have any implication, okay? I have parent visas where the person suffered of cancer, but now they are in remission. That is not affecting their visa application for the parent visa. Also, character is very important so that they have no criminal history. The third very important aspect is the sponsorship. So the child who is sponsoring the parent for Australian parent visa must meet the settled Australian resident or citizen requirement, which means under migration law, but it's actually very, you can mold this information. So settled means that the person lives here in Australia for 2 years, but not always has to be 2 years, because settled can mean that they have, Australian property already, they have, employment, they have a child here in Australia who goes to school. So these are all the aspects of the settlement in Australia. And if someone is here for 1 year, that's usually acceptable for settled Australian resident or citizen. Next slide, please. Eligibility requirements for the sponsor. The sponsor must be 18 years or older. Sometimes, and I've done this before, there is a possibility that you have a 10 years old child, and the child is a citizen of Australia, and the parents are always, so for example, I just mentioned a situation. I had a family who were in Australia, and they had a child born in Australia, and the child has become a citizen in 10 years. And the parents also become permanent residents. But the issue was the department has actually canceled the permanent residency of the parents for certain reason. That's something else. And the parents had to leave the country. Okay, but the child was a citizen by virtue of living in Australia from birth for 10 years. So what in this instance we could do, that the child actually could apply for the parent and bring them here as parents with a family member in Australia. So in this instance, the family had sisters, brothers in Australia, and one of the sisters has become a de facto sponsor with the 10 years old child. So not always just an 18 years old person can sponsor for parent visa. All right. Be an Australian citizen and permanent resident, or an eligible New Zealand citizen. Agree to cover any debts what the parent has incurred, okay, or they may have visa cancellation and they had to leave, as in this instance, and they were maybe in detention center and they had to pay for that. So the Commonwealth debt has to be paid before that can be sponsored, okay? Lodge and have an approved sponsorship application before the parent can apply for the visa. Now, this is not for all parent visa application, but definitely for the 8-7 subclass visa. So the sponsorship has to be approved before the person can sponsor a parent for a temporary 870 visa. In any other situation, the sponsorship doesn't require to be approved, but the sponsorship has to be lodged at the time of the application and must meet the requirements, as I said, eligibility, income test, income threshold, and settled Australian permanent resident or citizen. Next slide, please. So different visa subclasses, as I mentioned before. We have a temporary parent visa 870. That's a new concept a couple of years ago came into power. Then we have the contributory parent visa offshore. So the difference is if you see 143, that's an offshore parent visa. And if you see a 860, that's an onshore parent visa. And the contributory onshore parent visa has to be an aged person, okay? A 55 years old cannot apply onshore for a contributory parent visa because this is only available for contributory aged parent. Okay, so that's the three main subclasses there. Under the 143 contributory parent visa, there is also a 173, which is a first step as a temporary parent visa. And also under the 864, there is a temporary parent visa 884, which leads to the permanent residency. Why is that important? Because sometimes maybe people want to have the visa faster, so maybe that's a temporary visa can be assessed faster, and also the parent doesn't require to pay the contribution in one hit. It can be spread out for a few years, okay, at the time of the grant of the visa. So the two subclasses, main subclasses is the subclass 143 contributory parent visa and the subclass 864 contributory aged parent visa, and this is onshore. So what does that means? It means that the person, when applying onshore, would be eligible for a bridging visa. Now, sometimes people apply for the 143 visa as well onshore while they are here on a visitor visa, but they're not eligible for a bridging visa. So that's a two main difference, onshore application and offshore application. We also have a normal parent, I call it normal parent visa, which is the subclass 103, which if you are 25 years old and you get permanent residency in Austria and your parents are 45 years old, maybe you consider to apply for this because the processing time is around 30 years. Okay, so it's a very long, that's why we have so few applications under this subclass. And we also have the onshore, again, 804 aged parent visa. That's not contributory, this is just aged parent. However, the processing time here is also can be over 20 years. But during the processing time, the parent can stay in Australia on a bridging visa. All right, so these are the main subclasses. And then now we're gonna go to the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, we have this subclass 103, which is really the basic parent visa, but also require all the elements to be met, okay? So it's a permanent residency, has to be met balance of family test, okay? Has to met the sponsorship requirements, and it's an offshore application, okay? That's just in a nutshell. But as I mentioned, an extremely long processing time can be 30 years. So I don't want to waste time on this, okay? Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. Sorry, it must be some glitch somewhere. Yes, all right. So we have subclass 143, the contributory parent visa. This is very trendy amongst families in Australia. And as I mentioned, this is an offshore application. Again, the parent must meet the balance of family test. 50% of the children must be Australian citizen or permanent resident, just to show that they applied, okay? That's not a possibility, okay? So very important. Sponsorship requirements, again, settled Australian, also if salary has, you must provide an income report, like your financial record. I think it's called your tax record every year. It has to be about $56,000, and it's important for when you have to make the contribution and you have to provide an assurance of support. So immigration usually doesn't ask for the salary, but the assurance of at the time of the assurance of support, you must provide evidence of your income. Okay, so I think it's called income tax reports or something from the ATO. So that's what you would require to provide as a sponsor. Again, visa processing, as I mentioned, can be around 10, 12, sometimes 6 years. It's a little bit varies, but usually about 10 to 12 years, that's the processing time. In regards to the requirement for the contribution, it is only required at the end of the 10 years, not at the time of the application. At the time of the application, you must pay the government fee. And if you engage as a professional services, their professional fee. But the contribution and the assurance of support has to be paid at the time of the grant. So immigration is usually send an email, hey, you met the requirements, could you please pay this fee? And the contribution for one parent is about $46,000, and for two parents is about $92,000. And that's a contribution which is non-refundable. Once the contribution has been made, the visa is granted. And once the visa is granted and the person is in Australia, the person would be eligible to work rights, and it's permanent resident. So it's work rights and also Medicare. So parents would be eligible for Medicare once the visa is granted. Okay. Next slide, please. Excuse me. Then we have parallel, the aged parent 804, which is, as I mentioned, an onshore application. And it's not a costly application, but due to the fact that it's a lengthy process and the person has to be over 67 years of age when they apply for an aged parent visa, that's the minimum age requirement, then if it takes 20 years, the person may be going to be 87. And when you hit 80, 82, you may have medical issues. And that's what you have to be prepared for, because this bridging visa won't provide Medicare. You have to have for the parents private health insurance, which can be $400 or $500 a month, but you cover, and then you can select the best. It's usually an offshore tourist visa cover, because as I said, no insurance is available and Medicare for the bridging visa period. But you can seek insurance, but it's just a different category. You can speak to Medibank or Bupa, whichever is providing this. And you have to select the best possible cover for the parents while they are here. Sponsorship is all the same requirement. They must meet financial and settlement requirements. And there's no contribution has to be paid, so just the government fee. And certainly you can sponsor both parents, and the parents can live here once the visa is granted. Once the bridging visa is granted after the lodgement, the parents would be entitled to work rights, so they can contribute a little bit in Australia, or they can support your family and take care of children or grandchildren. And that's the benefit of having a 804 onshore application. On the bridging visa, the parent can travel, but they would require a second bridging visa, which allows them to travel. It says you can leave and re-enter into Australia and remain in Australia. So this is the important part during the bridging visa period, that they can come and go, but it has to have a second bridging visa. Next slide, please. Again, contributory aged parent, okay? The requirement here again is aged, and that, as I said, 67 years. Okay, if someone is 66 and half, then you can't apply for this visa. So sometimes overcome some limitation and wait until the person becomes age. Because the beauty of this is if this takes 10 years or 12 years, you can get a bridging visa under this subclass and you can be in Australia. Also under the 143 and 173 visa application, the good news is, because sometimes we can offer good news as well in migration, the good news is that there is a ministerial direction that if a person applied for a parent visa, due to the lengthy processing time, the department is much more easier granting a visitor visa and for a longer period of time for allowing the parents to stay in Australia. I have seen sometimes 3 years visitor visa, but usually they grant 12 months, which is very beneficial because the parents can be here for 12 months. All right. So as I said, the contributory age parent is the same as the contributory parent visa. The differences are that this has to be the person has to be aged, and the person has to be onshore, and they need to meet all the other requirements. Again, the contribution has to be paid just before the visa grant. No Medicare is available under this visa category under the processing time. So same thing, private health cover. All right, next slide, please. Now they implemented this temporary parent visa, which is very interesting, where there is no balance of family test is required. Unfortunately, the backflip is that this visa has a limitation. And the limitation is they're going to put a no further stay, which is, it's a PIC number, it's a public interest criterion number. Sorry, it's not a public interest criteria number, it's Schedule 8 requirements. It's called 8503. And that is the person would not be eligible to apply for any other visa while this visa is alive. Okay, so if this visa is granted for 3 years or 5 years, during that period of time, the visa holder will be limited and they cannot apply for another visa. So sometimes people are coming in, oh yeah, we're going to get this visa and then I can apply for a parent visa, I can just go out of the country. They are prevented to apply for another parent visa while they're holding this visa. So overcome of this, if there is a future alternative option that the person wants to become a permanent resident, then the best way is first to apply for the 143 or 173 visa, and then apply for this 870 visa, which in turn allows the parents to stay here 3 or 5 years, depends on what is your selection. And for 5 years, the bond what you require to pay is $10,000. For the 3-year visa is $5,000. So it's a bond, but it's a non-refundable bond, okay? So that's in a nutshell of the 870 visa. What the main difference is between the parent visa, contributory parent permanent, and this visa, for example, that the sponsor salary, and that's the family member, can be husband and wife, their salary must be over $87,000 or $85,000 per year to be eligible to sponsor the parent. Okay, so it means that we have the financial year ending in June. You can provide your tax assessment notice, and then you have to show minimum $87,000. I'm not sure exactly the exact figure. I think 83,800 or something in that vicinity. Under the contributory parent 173 or 143 or 864 and 884, you don't require this level of salary. I think is about $56,000, which is about the T-Smith salary level. The other very important issue is, as I mentioned at the beginning, under this visa category, the sponsorship has to be approved first. So there's a 2-steps application. First, we apply for the sponsorship, get it approved. Under the process, we can seek the person onshore or offshore, and we would like to apply onshore or offshore. If the department approves the onshore application, that's great. If they don't approve and they just approve the sponsorship for the visa, then the parent has to be offshore when they are applying for this visa. So that's a big difference between the normal permanent parent visa and this one. So the sponsorship has to be approved first. And the big difference is no balance of family test is required and the salary for the sponsor. And as I said, it's up to 3 years or 5 years. After 5 years, the visa can be extended for another 5 years or for another 3 years. So in a nutshell, a parent can be here for 10 years. Then that's the 10-year validity. So usually there are no more validity to this visa, okay? So that is a little bit limited. But if you apply for a 143 or a 173 contributory parent visa and you wish to have your parents here during the processing time, then you can use this vehicle, the 870 temporary visa, to facilitate their stay in Australia. The other big issue is there is no work rights under this visa category. So, you know, the parent can be at home with the grandchildren, but they won't be able to work, all right? They can be shareholders, okay? Because you can buy shares in any business and you can receive benefit under that, but they cannot work, all right? Next slide, please. Okay, so these visas need to be lodged onshore and lodged offshore. I explained that before. Under the 870, we can request an onshore or an offshore application. It's a box which required to be ticked. If the department says, yeah, the visa can be lodged onshore, then we can lodge the visa application onshore. Next slide. Comparison of Australian parent visa options, cost, processing times, and eligibility. I think you all can read this, and really, as I mentioned before, the cost, what is the government fee? The government fee at the moment is about $4,770 for a permanent resident visa. The subclass 804 is a 6,500. Oh, sorry, parent visa is 6,500 per person, and contribution is around $50,000. I think is about $46,000, and if you have 2 parents, then it's $92,000. And 870. Actually, just one very important remark in regards to the 870. This visa process is about 6 to 8 months. Okay, so this is very quick, and as I said, in some instances is one of the best options for the family to be reunited. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, now I don't know how we can do this moderation, but any questions and answers? Sorry, any questions, and I will answer the question. No questions?
Yes.
Hi, Agnes. My name is Javita. Can you hear me?
Yes, Javita, I can hear you.
Thank you for the amazing presentation. So maybe you have repeated this when you were talking to us, but I just want to confirm again. My
Yes.
mom is currently on 870.
Yes.
It's been approved for 5 years.
Yes.
Is it something that you can give it up and then apply for one of the longer, like a PR residency thing, or
no, you have to
there's
wait
no...
until it's you have to wait until it's expiring.
So if it's close to expiry, which is around 2027, age-wise as well, she will qualify for the aged parent visa or the age contributor. We haven't decided that one yet.
Yes.
But can that be an onshore application?
They would once this visa is expiring, because you cannot lodge any visa from this category, okay? They would need to leave the country and come back on possible visitor visa, all right? So that is very important, that they can come back on a visitor visa and they can apply for the contributory parent visa onshore, okay? So that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, got it. Right.
Okay, so the issue is, this is why it's so important that our clients are talking to us, because when you lodge this visa, just before that, you could lodge a parent visa, and then you wouldn't have a problem, so you just wait and you can extend this, but sometimes that's not available. Yes, next question. Thank you so much, Gia.
Thank you.
Next question.
Hi, Agnes. I did type it in the chat, but I'll ask anyway. With the subclass 870, once you've if you've gone for 5 years and then you've gone for another 5 years, once you've exceeded the 10 years, can you reapply and start the process again? Or is it only the once to the 10 years max?
My understanding is a once 10 years, so you can extend it twice. To tell you the truth, no 10 years has expired yet. Okay, so we don't know if immigration is going to change that. But it's my understanding is you can extend only once, and this is for up to 10 years.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. You have, what is the situation? Do you have more family members, so you don't meet the balance of family test?
No, we're just considering our options right now, that's all.
Okay, that's fine. As I said, if you have any issues in regards to future permanent residency, then, you have to consider the lodging a parent visa just to have it in, and then lodge the 870, because then you always have a permanent residency application in a process. Okay? And Cheryl, I can see your message here. Can an applicant onshore in Australia BVA change from a subclass 864 application for a subclass 804? How does a 3002 affect this? Actually, you know what? I would need to investigate on this, Cheryl, and Cheryl, and I would need to come back to you, because they can go, if they are on a bridging visa A, they might not be eligible to apply, but they might be able to change the visa class, because there is an option to change visa classes once your application is pending. But I just need to check if you can change an 8604 to an 804, or it is vice versa. So may I come back to you, Cheryl, on this? I just, going to email you a short note once I double check this. But the issue is, thank you. The issue is if a parent visa cannot be applied on a BVA, as you rightly mentioned in 3002, then the person cannot apply onshore. Okay, and I think that's maybe the issue in this instance. Okay, but I double confirm that to you. Right? Any other question? Thank you so much. Thank you so much for everybody. Okay, please scan this, whatever it's called, I am always scan the QR code. Yes, that's what it's called. Please scan in, and then hopefully we can stay in touch. And if you have any more, detailed requirement, just reach out, and I am happy and aware myself. There is one very final, very interesting comment what I would like to make. I have a very, very interesting case right now where a adopted father wants to lodge a parent visa application, and yes, certainly an adopted father can lodge a parent visa application because adopted child is a child, and this person would meet the balance of family test because he has only one daughter as an adopted daughter. There is only one difficulty. The mother, who was his wife, has passed away. So under Australian law, under Australian migration law, if your parent, your adopted child, parent passed away, the other parent cannot apply for a parent visa. Yeah. But we find out very rightly that there is an Australian High Court decision, and that's why it's so important that, you're dealing with lawyers, because we look at all the High Court decisions and court decisions and precedents. And the High Court says an adopted child or a child can be a psychological child of the parent. So if we can prove that the child psychologically and, financially throughout the years dependent on the father or on the mother, whoever is the survivor parent, okay, then that child is still a child and can apply for the parent visa. So I just find that fascinating, because I just did some serious investigation, and there is a British law on this, and then the Australian High Court has implemented this. So sometimes, you can change and twist things around, and, certainly we are here to help. So, but I thought I shared this experience with you. So on that note, I would like to wish you an amazing day, and hopefully, we remember tomorrow to our Anzacs heroes, and some of your parents may be here and celebrate with you, and I wish you all the very best, okay? Thank you so much. I close the meeting. Thank you.